Don't be mad. Mum, my son said. He placed a thick binder on the counter of the kitchen I built. My kitchen. He explained it was now a commercial facility for his startup, and that I, at 58 years old, would now require his written permission to enter it. My name is Margaret Holloway, though everyone who buys my scones calls me Maggie. I am 58 years old. I am a widow, and I am, or perhaps I was, the owner of a small but respected home catering service. This kitchen, the one in my sprawling suburban home just outside Columbus, Ohio, is not just a room. It is the heart of my entire life. My late husband and I designed it together, arguing over the depth of the sink and the placement of the double ovens. For the last decade, it has been my sanctuary and my enterprise. That afternoon, the kitchen was peaceful, smelling of almond extract and warm sugar. I was timing a batch of biscotti for a corporate client, the air still and comfortable. Then Lucas walked in. My son, at 35, always looks like he's just stepped out of a magazine about men who own things. His suit was sharp, his shoes expensive. He entered my kitchen carrying a thick, leather-bound binder and his laptop, which was already open and glowing. He placed the binder on the heavy butcher block I used for kneading dough, sliding it just close enough to interrupt my work. Don't be mad. Mom, he said. His voice was casual, light, the exact tone he always used when he was about to apologize for buying the wrong brand of milk or forgetting to call his aunt. He smiled, a quick flash of reassurance that suddenly felt rehearsed. It's just a formality for the new venture, he continued, tapping the cover of the binder. Pure Plate Kitchens, LLC. Pure Plate Kitchens. His meal prep startup. I had been so proud. I wiped my floured hands on my apron and opened the cover. The first page was titled Kitchen Use Agreement. I scanned the dense paragraphs, my mind trying to fit them into a familiar box. Insurance, I thought. He's just adding me to his policy, like a good son. But the words were wrong. They were sharp, legal, cold. Words like commercial production facility, proprietary access, and LLC exclusive control. My kitchen, my home, registered as a commercial facility belonging solely to his company. Lucas. What is this? He let out a small, practiced sigh, the kind reserved for people who just don't get the pace of the modern world. Mum, it's just logistics. For the insurance, for the food safety licenses, for liability risks. We're scaling. We have investors looking. We have to be compliant. He gestured around the room, at my spice racks and my copper pots. From now on, anyone using the main kitchen facility needs to schedule their time, sign the logbook, and be approved by me or the designated shift manager. My blood ran cold. I flipped a page, and my eyes locked onto a sentence in bold, heavy type. Primary kitchen access, restricted to authorized personnel only. Below it, a clause detailing penalties for unauthorized access. Unauthorized. In the kitchen, where I taught him to hold a whisk. My voice came out thin. So, what about me? Am I authorized for the first time? Lucas broke eye contact. He looked down at his laptop screen, typing nothing. Well, that's the thing. It's a formality, mostly. You can still cook, of course. You'll have to schedule it. When it's approved. He brightened then, as if remembering a key feature. And for your personal stuff. Just for making your own dinner or coffee. You can use the new secondary kitchen. the secondary kitchen. The cramped, windowless kitchenette he'd insisted on building in the basement 3 months ago, jammed between the water heater and the laundry machines. A memory surfaced, sharp and unwelcome. Lucas at this same table, just a few years ago, sliding different papers toward me. It's just a simple loan for the kitchen upgrade. Mom, he'd urged, his voice earnest. New wiring, better ventilation. It'll expand your business, make things easier for you. I had signed. I had trusted. I stared at the kitchen use agreement. That cold feeling wasn't dread. It was realization. He hadn't been upgrading my kitchen. He had been acquiring it. I did not scream. I did not throw the binder. I pressed my lips together so tightly they ached, tasting the flour still on them. I looked past him, at the room I had built, the shelves I had stocked, the life I had made. I turned back to my son, my only child. How long? I asked, my voice quiet. Have you been planning this? Lucas actually looked annoyed, snapping his laptop shut. Mom, don't overreact. This is just business. He dismissed my shock as emotion. He dismissed my life's work as a formality. And in that quiet, calculated dismissal, the first seed of pure, patient fury was sown. Sleep did not come. The house was silent, but my mind was loud, replaying a loop of signatures. Lucas at the kitchen table, Lucas in the study, Lucas catching me by the door on his way out. Mom, just sign this. It's to avoid tax complications. Mom, this is just to make it easier to get capital for the service expansion. I remembered the click of his expensive pen, the weight of his impatience as I reached for my reading glasses, and his gentle, "It's fine. Mom, I already read it. It's just boilerplate." I trusted him. I signed. At 6 a.m, I gave up on sleep. I went to the small safe in my closet, the one where I kept my late husband's watch and the deed to the house. I pulled out the thin folder of documents Lucas had given me copies of over the years. The fluorescent light of the kitchen. My kitchen felt harsh as I spread the papers on the counter. It took me less than 10 minutes to find it. The loan agreement for the kitchen upgrade. The house, specifically this kitchen, was listed as the primary collateral, and the business registration for Pure Plate Kitchens LLC showed Lucas as the sole proprietor. My name was there, but not as an owner, not as a partner. I was listed, on page 4, as an honorary advisor, a title as empty and insulting as the look he'd given me yesterday. I was still staring at the words when Brianna let herself in through the side door. Lucas's wife always looked like she was being photographed, polished, bright, and completely impenetrable. She was in her mid-30s, a communications expert, and she walked into my kitchen like she was assessing a new office space. Maggie. Good. You're up, she said, her voice dripping with artificial warmth. She was holding a glossy, trifold brochure. Lucas told me you were a little overwhelmed yesterday, so I wanted to reframe this for you. She placed the brochure on top of my loan documents. It showed pictures of a tiny, sterile kitchen space. The convenient secondary kitchen. We are so excited about this transition, she said, her hands gesturing smoothly. It's all about protecting the brand. We need a professional image. Maggie. We need to be fully FDA compliant. The investors need to see a streamlined, modern operation. She paused, then lowered her voice into a conspiratorial, friendly tone. Honestly, the messy grandma vibe, while charming for catering, just doesn't fit the upscale, clean living demographic we're targeting. my messy grandma vibe, the one that had paid for Lucas's college education. She then insisted on showing me the space. She led me down the basement stairs. The air was damp and smelled of detergent. There, in the corner, was the kitchenette, a small, two-burner electric stovetop, a counter the size of a cutting board, and a sink that belonged in a college dorm. The ceiling was low, pipes exposed. The washing machine kicked into its spin cycle, filling the concrete room with a deafening rumble. "See," Brianna yelled over the noise. "Perfectly functional for your personal needs. This way, you won't have to worry about disrupting the production flow upstairs." I stared at the cold, unused stovetop. It was then I finally understood. The new stainless steel counters Lucas had installed 6 months ago. The security cameras he put up over the main kitchen doors, claiming they were for my safety. The smart lock on the pantry. The one he said was to keep the grandkids out of the snacks. They weren't upgrades. They were armor. They were steps in a long, quiet campaign to commercialize my space and evict me from its center. Brianna checked her phone, already bored. "Look, Maggie, it's just better this way. We can't have mistakes. In fact, one of the investors specifically said they loved hearing our kitchen wasn't just accessible to untrained seniors who might wander in." Untrained seniors wander in. I said nothing. I just walked back upstairs. Brianna trailing behind me, still talking about brand synergy. When she left, I stood in the hallway, just outside the kitchen entrance. I pulled out my phone and opened the smart home app Lucas had installed for me last year, the one that controlled the thermostat and the new kitchen locks. I tapped the icon for the main kitchen door. A small, red notification popped up at the bottom of the screen. Access revoked by administrator. I walked back down the stairs and into the basement. I sat on the small stool Lucas had provided. I placed my hand on the cold electric burner. This wasn't about a kitchen. This was about honor. It was about being told, in the clearest terms possible, that I had been demoted. I was no longer the head of my home. I was a tenant, banished to the lower level. I had to call Mrs. May Henderson and cancel her order for the baptism brunch. 3 dozen mini quiches, 2 dozen scones. I blamed the oven. Then I called the mayor's office and cancelled the biscuit order for their charity breakfast. I blamed a sudden flu. I was running out of excuses. My regulars, people I had fed for 15 years, called my cell, their voices full of concern. I sat on the basement steps, lying to them, my face hot with shame. Above me, I could hear the sounds of an entire production, the scrape of new equipment on my hardwood floors, the bright, artificial laughter of strangers, and Lucas's booming voice. Brianna was staging a photo shoot for a magazine spread, The Dynamic Young Chef Modernizing Home-Style Classics. I could smell them testing recipes in my kitchen. I was carrying a basket of laundry up from the basement, trying to time it for when the kitchen crew was taking a break. When Rosa Martinez knocked on the side door. Rosa and I had worked the line together at a diner back when we were 20. She now managed a massive supermarket, and she had the sharpest eyes of anyone I knew. She saw me coming up the stairs, my face drawn. She glanced past me, through the new glass-panelled door Lucas had installed, into the kitchen. It was full of young people in black pure-plate t-shirts, arranging food under bright lights. "Since when do you have staff?" "Mags," she asked, her eyes narrowing. "And why are you climbing out of the dungeon?" We sat in the living room, the one room they weren't using. I tried to wave it off. "Oh, It's just Lucas, expanding the business. Rosa didn't buy it. She just waited, her gaze steady. And I, who hadn't cried in front of anyone since my husband's funeral, unraveled. I told her everything. The kitchen use agreement, the honorary advisor title, the humiliation of being told I had a messy grandma vibe. I told her about the access code and the new, tiny stove in the basement. When I finished, my voice thick, I waited for the pity. Instead, Rosa looked furious. "He locked you out," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "Of your own kitchen. That little—" She stopped herself, taking a deep breath. "No, Maggie. This isn't expansion. This is theft." She pulled a business card from her purse. "You're not going to endure this. You're going to call Carla Ruiz tomorrow. 9 a.m. I'm texting her right now to expect you." The name on the card was Harborline Legal Group. The next day, I sat in a small, clean office with worn carpet and stacks of files. Carla Ruiz was a woman my age, with kind eyes and a spine made of steel. I told her the story again, stumbling, admitting I'd been foolish, that I'd signed everything. "I don't think there's anything you can do." I finished, feeling hopeless. I needed to tell someone. Carla just listened, nodding slowly. When I was done, she didn't offer sympathy. She offered analysis. "May I see the documents?" All of them. The mortgage papers from the upgrade, the LLC registration, and that use agreement. I handed her the folder. For 20 minutes, the only sound was the rustle of paper. Finally, she looked up, pushing her glasses up her nose. "You're right, you signed this," she said, tapping the kitchen agreement. "But what about this?" She held up a different document, a digital one I'd printed from my email, an addendum to the LLC filing. This DocuSign signature, transferring permanent operational control. It's dated April 14th, 2 years ago. I don't remember that specific one. I admitted. "You wouldn't," Carla said, checking her phone calendar. I just checked. April 14th, 2 years ago, was a Tuesday. What's significant, however, is what Rosa told me last night. "Weren't you in the hospital that week? For your broken wrist, the air left my lungs. I had slipped on the ice, spent 3 days laid up. I couldn't even hold a pen, let alone operate a computer to e-sign a complex legal document." "Maggie," Carla said, leaning forward. "What Lucas is doing isn't smart business. It has a name. It's called elder financial abuse. It's called coercion. And that e-signature that's called fraud. We can argue that none of these contracts are valid because you were never given full, truthful disclosure." Hearing the word abuse applied to my son made me want to throw up. It was a word for strangers, for criminals, not for the boy I'd taught to bake. But as I looked at the date on that fraudulent signature, the shame I felt began to curdle, changing into something harder, colder. "What do we do?" I whispered. Carla gathered the papers. "For now, you cooperate. You are the confused, slightly overwhelmed mother. You ask questions. You ask for email copies of schedules, of policies. You need to gather proof that he is actively, systematically denying you access." She stood up, walking me to the door. Her voice was firm. "He has built this entire business on your back, then locked you out of the building. If you want this, Maggie, we won't just get you back in. We will make him stand on the sidewalk, ringing the doorbell, begging to be let in." I put on my apron, the one he hadn't packed away, and went upstairs. I found Lucas in the kitchen, directing 2 new employees on how to properly portion quinoa. Lucas. "Honey?" I said, forcing a warm, slightly confused smile. I was just thinking, if I'm going to be using the basement, I don't want to be in your way. Could you maybe print me out the schedule just so I know your busy times? He looked relieved. His overreacting mother was finally being logical. Sure. Mom? Good idea. I played the part of the obedient, slightly dot matrix era mother for the next 2 weeks. I'd ask him questions about the business, just trying to understand this new world. Oh, investors. That sounds so complicated. What kind of paperwork do they need? While he was busy barking orders, his briefcase would be on the dining room table. I'd slip in, my hands shaking, and use my phone to photograph every document I could find. Contracts, invoices, supply orders. My nights were spent not in the basement, but at my old desktop computer. I scrolled back through years of emails, searching for PurePlate and DocuSign. I found them. Dozens of, "Please sign this," "Mom, it's urgent," emails. I hadn't read them. I had just clicked where he told me. One signature request, in particular, was dated August 10th, 3 years prior. I stared at the date. August 10th. I was in Vermont that day, at my college roommate's funeral. I remembered standing by her grave, my phone turned off in my purse. Yet, according to the digital log, I had opened and signed a document from an IP address in downtown Columbus at exactly 2:15 p.m. My friend Rosa worked her magic. She knew the branch manager at Red River Community Bank, the local bank Lucas had used. She didn't mention fraud. She just had me, as the owner of the house, request a copy of the loan package, claiming I needed it for my estate planning. The packet arrived a week later. I brought it straight to Carla. We sat at her small conference table as she spread the documents out. There it was, the original application for the loan that had upgraded my kitchen. And there I was, listed not as an honorary advisor, but as Margaret Holloway, co-owner. Carla looked at the signature page for a long, quiet moment. She pointed to my name. The signature was mine, but it was off. Too clean. The edges were sharp, almost pixelated, sitting just slightly above the line, as if it had been lifted from another document and pasted. He scanned your signature. Maggie, Carla said, her voice flat. This isn't a signature. This is a photocopy. He used your house as collateral for a business loan by committing bank fraud. While I was processing this, my phone buzzed with a social media notification. Brianna had tagged me in a new post on Instagram. It was a picture of Lucas, arms crossed, smiling in my kitchen, with the new stainless steel reflecting his face. The caption read, "So proud of Lucas Holloway, carrying on the family legacy in the kitchen where his mother, Maggie, taught him everything. Pure plate inspiration family business." I pressed like on the post, my thumb shaking with rage. I showed the phone to Carla. "Keep liking them," she said, a grim smile on her face. "Every time he tags you as the inspiration, he's digging his own grave. He is publicly admitting that the entire goodwill of this business is built on your legacy. He can't have it both ways." That evening, I waited for him. He came home late, smelling of packaged salads and stress. "Lucas," I said, stopping him before he could go upstairs. "I was looking at some old papers, that loan we got for the kitchen. You told me it was just for tax purposes. Why did the bank send me papers listing me as a co-owner of PurePlate?" He waved his hand, not even looking at me as he loosened his tie. Mom, please. It's just wording. It's how you get these things done. The bank likes to see a family commitment. It's just semantics. Semantics, I repeated. Just wording. Yeah. Mum. Don't worry about it. I've got it handled. He walked past me, up the stairs. I went to the phone and called Carla. He admitted it. He said it was just wording to get the loan. There was a pause on the other end. Okay? Maggie, Carla said, her voice shifting. We have him. We have the fraudulent signature. We have the admission of misrepresentation. It's time to stop defending, and it's time to start attacking. We can file a quiet complaint with the bank's fraud department, and we simultaneously file a civil suit to void the agreements and demand an injunction to get you back in your kitchen. I looked at the closed kitchen door, now locked with a keycard I didn't possess. I thought of the basement, cold and smelling of bleach. No, I said, surprising myself with the strength in my voice. I don't just want my kitchen back. He built this on my name. He used my grief and my trust. I want to return the favor. Carla's complaint to the bank was quiet, but the explosion it caused was not. It took 3 days. Lucas burst into the house on a Tuesday night, not looking banbao, but pale and furious. He had a letter crumpled in his fist. What did you do? He yelled, storming not into the kitchen, but into the living room where I was pretending to read. I don't know what you mean. Lucas. The bank Red River. They're reviewing the loan. They're asking for original signatures, new affidavits. What did you tell them? He was pacing, his expensive shoes scuffing the rug. You're ruining my business. Mom, after all the work I put in, you're trying to sabotage me just because you're upset about the schedule. I stood up, my hands gripping the arms of the chair. Is that what you call it? A schedule? He stared at me, his breath heavy with anger. He saw, for the first time, that I was not confused or sad. I was angry, and it terrified him. Fine, he said, his voice dropping to a cold, clipped tone. He walked to the kitchen entrance and stood squarely in the doorway, blocking my view. If you can't be a team player, he said, pulling out his phone, then you can't be in the game. I can't have you creating legal risks for the company. I can't have my own mother undermining my capital. I'm sorry. Mum, you've forced my hand. He tapped his screen. I still had the smart home app open on my own phone in my pocket. I didn't need to look. I felt the vibration as the notification came through. My honorary advisor access, the one that let me schedule time, was gone. I was now just an occupant. Lucas, you can't. I just did. He turned and walked into the kitchen. The new automatic glass sliding doors, the ones I thought were a silly high-tech toy, hissed shut behind him. The camera above the door, a small black dome, stared at me. I took a step forward, and the magnetic lock on the door beeped twice. A sharp, metallic no. He began to use the children. He didn't keep them from me, which would have been too obvious. He did something smarter, crueler. He sent them to me. Little Noah and Lily, their faces full of rehearsed concern. Grandma, Lily said, crawling into my lap in the living room. Daddy says you're very tired and stressed. He says you should rest and not worry about working anymore. We want you to relax. Grandma, Noah added, his 7-year-old eyes serious. Mommy and Daddy can handle everything now. Their innocent words were a soft, poisoned knife. He was teaching them to see me as feeble. Brianna handled the outside world. I heard her on the phone in the driveway, her voice pitched with just the right amount of loving concern. "Oh, Patty, she's not herself. She's been under so much stress. Bless her heart. She's starting to get confused, misreading documents. We're just trying to take the burden off her. She was building the narrative, brick by brick. If I fought, I was senile. If I complained, I was hysterical. The next day, I saw them all leave. Lucas, Brianna, the kids. The house was empty. I walked to the kitchen door. I pushed my old key into the lock, the one that had worked for 30 years. It turned, but nothing happened. He had disconnected it. I tried the handle. The magnetic lock buzzed angrily. An alarm, soft but insistent, began to chime inside the kitchen. My phone rang. It was Brianna. "Maggie," she said, her voice perfectly calm. "I just got a notification. Are you trying to access the kitchen? You know you can't do that. It violates the safety protocols. The staff will be there in 20 minutes. Please, wait in the basement." But the final humiliation, the one that broke the last thread of my maternal softness, was the skillet. I was in the basement, trying to make spaghetti on the tiny electric burner. I realized my favorite pan, the heavy, perfectly seasoned cast iron skillet my husband had given me on our 10th anniversary, was still upstairs. I went up. Brianna was in the kitchen, her laptop open on the counter. I stood at the glass door. She looked up, annoyed at the interruption. "What is it?" "Maggie, I need my pan," I said, feeling my voice shrink. "My black cast-iron skillet. It's in the bottom cabinet, to the left of the stove." She sighed. A long, put-upon breath. She didn't move. "Maggie, I'm in the middle of a workflow. Can't you just use one of the new ones downstairs? We've stocked you. It's not the same. Please. Brianna, it will take you 10 seconds. She rolled her eyes. She walked over, swiped her own card to open the door just a crack, reached in, and grabbed the pan. She didn't hand it to me. She placed it on the floor, just inside the kitchen, and let the door hiss shut again. "I can't let you touch it," she said, as if explaining to a child. "Cross-contamination. You've been in the basement." I had to kneel, reach my arm through the small opening she'd left, and drag the 20-pound skillet across the threshold like a dog pulling a scrap. That night, I went back down to the basement. I didn't cry. I took out a fresh legal pad and a pen. I wrote down the date. I wrote skillet. I wrote alarm. I wrote safety protocols. I wrote down every word Brianna had said to the neighbors, every word my grandchildren had parroted. I created a ledger of my own humiliation. At midnight, I called Carla. I could barely speak past the cold knot of rage in my throat. I just told her what happened. There was a long silence. Then Carla asked, "Are you ready for this to get big?" "Maggie, because if we take the next step, there is no more family. There is no going back." I looked at the skillet sitting cold on the tiny stove. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." Help arrived in an unexpected form. Patty Green, my neighbor from across the street for 20 years, knocked on the front door. Not the kitchen door. Patty is 62 and has the subtlety of a dropped hammer. She was holding 2 coffee mugs. "I'm not blind." "Maggie," she said, brushing past me into the living room. "I've seen you standing outside that glass door like a stray cat. Brianna's been telling people you're stressed. You don't look stressed. You look besieged. Now, what the hell are they doing to you in your own house? So I told her. The coffee in her mug went cold. Like Rosa. Her first reaction was not pity, but a magnificent, simmering rage. That worthless, over-educated parasite. She muttered. Okay. We're not letting this stand. Brianna might be telling people you're senile, but I know you. What you need is leverage. She tapped her phone. My nephew, Evan, is 17. He's one of those computer kids who can make a laptop sit up and beg. He helped me figure out who was stealing my garden gnomes last year just from my security feed. He's coming over. An hour later. Evan was sitting in my living room. He was shy, all limbs and large headphones, but his eyes were quick. I explained the situation, focusing on the smart home system. My son. He says I don't have access because of policy. I told him. Evan nodded. Did you pay for the system, Mrs. Holloway? Yes. I said. It was part of the upgrade. I paid the installer directly. Then you're the primary account holder, even if he's the administrator. He can't lock you out of the main account without your original credentials. He worked on his laptop for 10 minutes, using my old email receipts from the installation. Okay, I'm in. Let's look at the access logs. He turned the screen. Here you are. Maggie home. And here is Lucas admin. And here. He pointed. 2 weeks ago. Lucas admin changed credentials for Maggie home from full access to no access. He didn't just put you on a schedule, ma'am. He erased you from the system. Seeing it in black and white access revoked felt like a second, more technical betrayal. Then Evan had another thought. Did your son used to live here? Does he have an old computer anywhere I pointed to the small desk in the corner? He left that one when he got his new laptop. Said it was a dinosaur. It was a dinosaur that had remembered everything. Evan booted it up. People get lazy with old machines, he murmured. Tucked away in an old browser. A password was saved. An old Gmail account Lucas had used when he first started mapping out his business plan. We didn't let Evan look. I thanked him. Patty paid him $50 despite his protests, and as soon as they left, I called Carla. I gave her the password. She called me back 3 hours later. Her voice was different, colder. Maggie. This is no longer just bank fraud. This is federal. She explained. Lucas hadn't just gotten a business loan. He had applied for and received a substantial federal incentive grant. A grant, Carla explained, from a program specifically designated for woman-owned small businesses. He registered Pure Plate Kitchens, LLC with you, Margaret Holloway, listed as the 100% owner and proprietor. Carla said, her voice tight. He used your name, your age, your gender, to get fast-tracked approval and tens of thousands of dollars in government money. Then, 2 months later, using an internal-only resolution I found in this email, he transferred 100% of the ownership to himself, citing you as having retired to an advisory role. The room felt suddenly unsteady. I remembered all his speeches about my legacy, about building on the foundation you gave me. He hadn't just built on it. He had strip-mined it. He had sold my name, my identity as a woman, as a business owner, to get his seed money, and then discarded me. This is our weapon. Maggie, Carla said, pulling me back. This is the one he can't explain away as a family misunderstanding. We need to be careful. We need to contact the Office of the Inspector General, and probably the IRS. But we have to frame this perfectly. We are not accusing him. We, as the legitimate owner of the business, are reporting a hostile takeover and fraudulent activity by a non-owner. I was no longer just a victim. I was a whistleblower. He will be investigated, I said, tasting the words. He will be buried in paperwork and audits for years, she corrected. What do you want to do? I looked at the kitchen calendar, the one I could still see through the glass. Lucas had a big red circle on it, 2 weeks from now. Investor showcase. I want to be there when he loses his kitchen, I said, and I know exactly what day that will be. Lucas found me in the living room 2 days later. He was practically vibrating with excitement, holding his phone as if it were a holy relic. Mom. Huge news, he announced, failing to keep the condescension out of his voice. You know that investor group I've been courting, Springline Capital, the big ones? Well, they're flying in from Chicago. They want to do a full showcase and signing right here in the kitchen. He was bestowing this information upon me as if I were a favored servant. This is it, Mom, he said, pacing. This is the once-in-a-lifetime shot. We're locking in the next round of funding. I arranged my face into a mask of maternal support. Oh, Lucas, that's wonderful. A party. Here, not a party. Mom, a media event, a signing. We're having it live-streamed. Brianna has food reporters coming, and even 2 state representatives. They love the woman-owned startup story. He beamed, unaware of the irony. I just nodded along, gathering the data. My goodness, I said. When is all this? And how many people I want to make sure I stay out of the way? 2 weeks from Saturday, he said. 10 a.m. sharp. Don't worry. You won't even have to come downstairs. We'll have the whole house prepped. As soon as he left, I was on the phone. Carla, I said. He just handed us the date, the time, and the guest list. The 4 of us met that night. Not in my house, but at Patty's, huddled around her kitchen table. Patty, Carla, Evan, and me. A 58-year-old baker, a 62-year-old neighborhood watch, a 17-year-old hacker, and a lawyer who specialized in elder abuse. It was the strangest, strongest team I had ever been a part of. Carla laid out the plan. He's bringing the investors and the media, she said. We are bringing the government. Carla had already drafted the formal complaints on her signal. She would file them electronically. One to the Office of the Inspector General regarding the fraudulent federal grant, one to the IRS regarding the business registration and undeclared transfer of ownership, and, my personal favorite, a simple, anonymous tip to the county health department, reporting a large, unlicensed commercial food operation being run out of a residential basement, and concerns about improper food handling in the main kitchen. We will time the visits, Carla said, her eyes gleaming. The OIG will be a quiet, professional inquiry. The IRS will be a formal notification. But the health inspector, they have the right to shut an operation down on the spot. We arranged for all 3 visits to be scheduled for the same day. Saturday, 2 weeks from now, at 10:30 a.m. While Carla prepared the legal declarations, Evan worked on his laptop. The live stream is my way in, he explained, his shyness gone, replaced by focus. He'll be running it on the house Wi-Fi. I can access the system feed. He's going to have a big monitor set up to show the PurePlate logo. I can make that monitor show. Other things? He had the clips ready. Me, standing at the glass door, locked out. The audio of the alarm, the close-up of the lock beeping, the humiliating, long shot of me having to drag my skillet off the floor. "This is your evidence, Mrs. Holloway," he said quietly. He filmed it himself. My job was the hardest. I had to practice being a victim, not a fighter. I stood in front of the basement bathroom mirror, my hands gripping the sink. I practiced the words Carla had written for me. A short, devastating statement of facts. I am Margaret Holloway. I am the person whose name was used to get the money. I am the person who is forbidden from entering this kitchen. Lucas, meanwhile, was too busy to notice the storm gathering. He was rarely home. But one evening, he stopped by, looking flustered but generous. "Mom," he said, stopping me on the stairs. "I know this transition has been hard on you, and I know you talked to the bank. It caused a hassle. But I'm willing to let it go." He reached into his jacket. "Once this spring-line deal closes, the cash flow is going to be incredible. I've structured a new monthly payment for you, a stipend, let's say $500 a month. Just, for being supportive. All you have to do is stop with the legal hassle." He was offering me $500 a month to stay silent while he sold my life's work. I called Carla later to report the conversation. "That's wonderful, Maggie," she said, and I could hear her smile. He just tried to bribe a federal witness. That night, I walked past the kitchen. I looked at the big calendar Lucas kept on the wall. I unhooked the red marker, uncapped it, and drew a thick, final circle around that Saturday. It was not a celebration. It was a deadline. It was the day I would get my house back. The night before the event, the house was a hive of frantic, silent activity. I sat in the living room, in the dark, the pages of Carla's prepared statement resting unread in my lap. I was rehearsing the words in my head. Beyond the living room, the kitchen blazed with rented lights. I heard Lucas directing people, his voice sharp and energized. I heard Brianna organizing equipment, the click of her heels on the hardwood. They were bringing in extra refrigerators, hanging Pure Plate Kitchens banners over my wallpaper, and setting up cameras. I was an inconvenient piece of furniture they had to work around, a ghost in the machine. It was almost 11 o'clock when the activity finally quieted. I heard a soft tap, not on the front door, but on the closed door of the living room. Brianna stood in the doorway. She was not the polished strategist I was used to. Her makeup was gone. Her eyes were puffy and red, and she was clutching her robe closed. "Can I?" she asked, gesturing to the armchair across from me. I nodded, my heart suddenly tight. This was new. She had never, not once, sat with me without a directive or an agenda. She sat on the edge of the cushion, her hands twisting in her lap. "I can't sleep. Maggie," she whispered. Her voice was thin, stripped of its bright, corporate veneer. "I haven't slept for days. I found something." She took a shaky breath. I thought I knew what he was doing. I thought it was just business. But I found out last week. He took out another loan, a short-term one. Very high interest. He used the house as collateral. Again. She looked up, her eyes wide with a fear I recognized. "He didn't tell me. He just did it." The words came faster then. A confession. "I knew he used your name for the grant. I did. I told myself it was just paperwork. An angle. Everybody finds an angle. That's what I believed. But then he locked you out. He started, telling the neighbors you were forgetful, that you were confused. And when I made you ask for your own skillet, I saw your face. She was crying now, silent, ugly tears. I helped him. I helped him build the narrative that you were incompetent. That's not an angle, Maggie. That's monstrous. I'm complicit. She reached into her robe pocket and pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely unlock it. And it's all a lie. The whole business. It's a lie. She opened her photo gallery. It was full of screenshots, text messages from Lucas to a man named Sully. My eyes scanned the words. Lucas. Need that grant to clear. I'm down big. Sully feds don't pay bookies. Man. Lucas. They will. That old lady money is coming. My breath hitched. Old lady money. I scrolled to another text, dated 2 months ago, right after the grant was approved. Lucas. All clear. That whole woman-owned thing paid for Vegas. I didn't even put half of it into the stupid kitchen. Don't tell B. It wasn't for the business. It wasn't for the stainless steel or the new ovens. It was for gambling debts. He has a problem. Maggie. Brianna choked out. A serious one. I've been secretly photographing these for months. I was so afraid. He's going to pull us all down. The house. The kids. I didn't know what to do. He's my husband. I picked up my own phone, my hands steady. I pressed the video call icon for Carla. Her face, tired and backlit by a computer screen, appeared. Maggie. It's late. What's wrong, Carla? I have someone who needs to talk to you, I said. I turned my phone toward Brianna. Her name is Brianna. She has evidence. Brianna flinched, but she held up her own phone to my camera. Carla's eyes, even on the small screen, widened as she read the texts. Brianna? Carla's voice was crisp and commanding, cutting through the dark room. Listen to me very carefully. You are currently, whether you intended it or not, complicit in federal wire fraud and bank fraud. If you want to protect your children, and if you want to protect yourself, you need to make a choice. Right now. You need to be a witness, not a co-conspirator. What? What do I do? Brianna whispered. You send me everything, Carla said. Those screenshots. I also see references in his old emails to audio files, him bragging about wins, and emails about getting around the women-led rules. Do you have those? Brianna nodded, numb. Yes. He was so arrogant. He saved them. Send them to my email. Now. Brianna's thumbs flew. A moment later, Carla's phone pinged. I have them, Carla said. Brianna, do not speak to him about this. Tomorrow, you go to the event. You stand there. You say nothing. Let us handle it. The call ended. I looked at my daughter-in-law. I felt a cold, bitter pity. She was a rat. But she was a rat who had just gnawed through the last rope holding her sinking husband up. And she had, in her panic, confirmed that this was never a family dispute. It was a long con. Brianna stood up, wiping her face. She looked hollow. She walked to the door, then paused, her hand on the knob. Tomorrow, she said, her voice small. When he's standing in front of those investors, he's going to look at you, and he'll probably say, "Don't be mad, Mum." She turned to face me. "Don't believe him. But please, Maggie, let everyone see how long you've been angry for all of us." She slipped out, closing the door. I sat alone in the dark, the new, toxic evidence burning in my mind. The storm I had been planning for had just become a hurricane. By 10 a.m., my house was no longer my own. It was a production set. Strangers bustled through the hall camera operators, young chefs in black pure-plate shirts, and the investors from Springline Capital, all sharp suits and predatory smiles. A local food reporter I recognized was tasting a sample. The centerpiece of it all was my kitchen. A massive, vinyl pure-plate kitchens logo was stretched taut over the glass door, right where my handwritten recipe cards used to be taped. Lucas was in his element. He wore a starched, brilliant white chef's coat, embroidered with his name. He was leading the tour, his voice confident and smooth for the cameras. "And this is the heart of it all," he announced, gesturing grandly. "We took the inspiration, the legacy my mother built in this very room, and we professionalized it. We created a scalable, modern, million-dollar future business from that home-style seed." I was standing in the archway of the living room, on the very edge of the live stream's frame. He spotted me and smiled, a politician's smile. And there she is, the inspiration herself, the venerable Mrs. Holloway. A few people clapped politely. The lead investor, a sharp woman in her 40s, smiled at me. "We're just about to start the signing." "Mom," Lucas said, already dismissing me. "Why don't you go sit in the living room? It's crowded in here. We don't want you to get tired." The kitchen, my kitchen, was full of bright lights and the laughter of strangers. I was being sent to my room. Lucas stepped up to a small podium, the Springline Capital partners flanking him. The cameras zoomed in. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "This journey has been incredible, and as a proudly woman-owned business, we started." That's when the doorbell rang. Not a polite knock, but a firm, repeated chime. A stressed-looking production assistant opened the front door. A group of people stood on the porch. 4 men and 2 women. They weren't investors. They wore official-looking windbreakers and carried clipboards. They held up badges. "We're from the Office of the Inspector General," one said. "We're here to inspect the premises of a federal grant recipient, Pure Plate Kitchens, and we're from the County Health Department." A woman added, "We received a credible report of an unlicensed food production facility. We need to see the kitchens. All of them." Lucas's face went white. The cameras were still rolling, catching his frozen smile. He tried to recover, forcing a laugh. "Well, we believe in full transparency here. This is a wonderful, unexpected opportunity to show off our compliance." His eyes scanned the entryway, and then he saw her. Carla, standing just behind the officials, her arms crossed, and next to her, I had stepped out of the shadows. His mask of transparency shattered, replaced by a raw, flickering panic. "Before the tour," I said, my voice clear and loud in the suddenly quiet room, "if this is a celebration of the business, I'd like to say a few words." Lucas moved toward me. "Mom, now is not the time. You're emotional? Let's let these nice people do their jobs." "No," the female investor from Springline said, her voice cutting through. "Let her speak. She's the owner, isn't she? We'd love to hear the inspirational story." I looked at her. "The person listed on the grant application." "Yes." "Thank you." I stepped into the center of the lights, my hands clasped in front of me. I looked directly into the main camera, the one with the red light. "My name is Margaret Holloway," I said slowly, my voice not shaking. I am the person whose name was used to register this company as a woman-owned business. I am the person who was never told I was the owner. I am the person who was never told about the federal grant money taken in my name. A ripple of murmurs went through the room. The investors' smiles were gone. Lucas started to interrupt. Now. Hold on. That's a gross misunderstanding. I did not look at him. I kept my eyes on the camera. And I am the person who is currently, and has been for weeks, forbidden from entering my own kitchen. The kitchen you are standing in. I cannot enter it without the express, written permission of my son, Lucas Holloway. The silence was absolute. The federal inspector made a small, sharp, keep rolling gesture to the camera operator. This is a lie. A family misunderstanding, Lucas shouted, his face crimson. My mother is... She's confused. I am not confused. I said. That's enough. Carla stepped forward, holding up a hand. We're going to pause this performance to clarify a few legal details. As she spoke, Evan, sitting quietly in the back corner with his laptop, hit a key. The large television monitor behind Lucas, the one that was supposed to be showing the Pure Plate logo, flickered. It switched feeds. Suddenly, the screen was filled with grainy, time-stamped footage from the kitchen's own security camera. The room watched in silence as I appeared on screen, standing outside the glass door. They watched me try the handle. They heard the loud, angry beep of the lock. They heard Brianna's clear, disembodied voice. Maggie, you are violating safety protocols. You need to wait in the basement. The clip changed. There I was again, kneeling, dragging my cast-iron skillet across the floor through a crack in the door. A collective gasp went up from the reporters. The Springline investors looked at each other, horrified. The screen went black. The room was completely, utterly silent. Lucas stared at the blank monitor, then at the faces staring at him, and then, finally, at me. His entire future had evaporated in less than 3 minutes. Mum, he whispered, the old, familiar refrain coming out as a desperate croak. Don't be mad. His sentence hung in the air, unfinished. The lead federal inspector stepped between us, his voice polite but unyielding. Mr. Holloway, Mrs. Holloway, I think it's best if you both join us in a separate room for a private conversation. Right now. We were moved from the kitchen, now a contaminated crime scene of ambition, into my living room. It was no longer a home. It was a deposition room. The lead investor from Springline, her face a mask of cold fury, sat next to the lead federal inspector. Carla sat beside me, her briefcase open. Lucas was directed to a chair opposite us, alone. Brianna stood by the wall, trembling, looking at no one. Mr. Holloway, the inspector began. We need you to explain the discrepancies in the grant application for a woman-owned enterprise. It was a misunderstanding. Lucas started, his voice high. My mother was confused. I was not confused. I said, and everyone, including Lucas, looked at me. Let's not rely on memory, Carla said, her voice cutting into the room. She stood and began placing items on the coffee table as if they were exhibits. Exhibit A, she said, is the email from Mr. Holloway to the grants office, filed using his mother's name. Exhibit B is the DocuSign log for the ownership transfer, which we have verified was signed at 2:15 p.m. on April 14th, a day when Mrs. Holloway was, according to these hospital records, In a post-op room with a broken wrist. Lucas sank lower in his chair. Exhibit C, Carla continued, are text messages from Mr. Holloway to an associate, confirming that the grant money, which he referred to as old lady money, was being used to pay gambling debts, not to upgrade this facility. He states he didn't even put half of it into the kitchen. The Springline investor made a sharp, disgusted sound. And finally, Carla said, "We have testimony." She looked at Brianna. Brianna stepped forward, her voice a small, shaking reed, but her words were clear. He did it. He did all of it. He told me he had to build a narrative that Maggie was forgetful, losing it in case she ever made trouble. He's the one who revoked her access. I watched him do it. The inspector nodded, closing his notebook. Mr. Holloway, the grant will be immediately revoked. We are referring this matter for a full fraud investigation, which could carry significant criminal penalties. I suggest you find a lawyer. The lead investor stood up. And Springline Capital, she announced to the room, is officially and immediately pausing all commitments and conversations with Pure Plate Kitchens. We don't invest in fraudulent enterprises, Mr. Holloway, or, frankly, in fools. They turned and walked out. The reporters scrambled after them. Lucas watched his entire world leave the room. When the front door clicked shut, he finally collapsed. He fell out of the chair and onto his knees, crawling the few feet to me. He grabbed my hand. "Mom." He sobbed, his face wet and unrecognizable. "Mom, please, don't do this. I was under so much pressure. The debts. I was trying to build something. For us, for the family. Tell them to stop. You can stop this. Please. Mum, don't let them do this to me." He was still my son. His hand was warm. I looked at his desperate, broken face, and I felt nothing. The space where my unconditional love used to be was a cold, quiet void. I did not pull my hand away. I just let him hold it. I looked at Carla. Carla spoke. "There is a civil matter that must be resolved. Lucas." Parallel to the criminal investigation, she proposed the terms: a full and immediate transfer of all assets, branding, equipment, and intellectual property of Pure Plate Kitchens LLC to a new entity. "You will sign over everything," Carla stated. "You will keep only the debt you incurred, in exchange for your full cooperation, and only if you begin restitution. Mrs. Holloway will recommend leniency in the federal investigation." "You can't," he whispered, looking at me. "Mom, it's my business. I built it." I finally looked down at him, my son, kneeling at my feet. "You're wrong. Lucas," I said, my voice perfectly level. "You used my name to steal money. You used my kitchen to build your story. And then you made me ask permission to get my own frying pan." I leaned in. Just a little. "Now, you are going to learn what asking permission really means." We signed the papers that afternoon. The Holloway Kitchen Collective was born. It's been 6 months. The kitchen is alive again, but not with his employees. It's a community space, using the restitution funds from Lucas. I run a program for older women, teaching them how to turn their own recipes into small businesses. Brianna, as part of her own cooperation agreement, handles the finances, and she's meticulously honest. Yesterday, Lucas appeared at the door. He wasn't in a suit. He was in a plain apron, no logo. He works for me now, on contract, running deliveries. He stood at the entrance to my new office, the little room off the back of the kitchen, shifting on his feet. He was holding a shift schedule. Mum, I mean, Mrs. Holloway, he asked, his eyes on the floor. I need to request a shift change for Friday, and I was wondering if it would be okay if I used oven number 3 after hours for a personal project. I looked at him, the arrogance and charm all burned away, leaving just this quiet, tired man. I looked past him, to the new rule board I'd hung on the wall. All who use this kitchen will respect the one who built it. I took his form, I signed it, but I added one more line in the notes. Approved. Pending completion of the mandatory business ethics training. He just nodded. Yes. Ma'am. Thank you. That night, I locked the kitchen myself. I hung the new keys, the heavy ring with the new electronic keycard, on the hook by the door. I turned out the lights and whispered to the empty, quiet room, as if in answer to a question he'd asked a lifetime ago. I'm not mad anymore. Lucas. I'm just never handing over the keys to my life like that again. The kitchen was the same. But the power to say who could enter, that was finally, completely, mine. Thanks for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're all tuning in from, so drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Please subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, give this video a like, and hit that hype button to help more people hear this.